Who are the most talented teams in the country? Doesn't guarantee wins. As Mima always said, talent does not guarantee you anything, but not having talent does guarantee you something, and it's a something you will not like. Nailed that Mima quote. First time around, nailed that Mima quote. Those who know. So Cooper Pategna put out a really good piece. It's still up right now over on 247sports.com, and it's looking at the 24/7 Sports Team Talent Composite, which is just a measure of the players you have on your roster and how talented they are. It's not an exact science, but it's pretty fairly accurate. To the tune that Michigan's the only non-top 10, not top 10 from this group that's won a national title in the last decade. I think they were 14th last year and won a national title. Outside of Michigan, everybody who's won a national title in the last decade has been top 10 on this list. So, a couple of takeaways I had from this. The first thing is it's still Bama and Georgia and Ohio State and then everybody else. There's a misnomer floating around the old water cooler that Bama's down a notch. Bama's still got the most talented roster in college football. Like, after Caleb Downs left, after Isaiah Bond left, after their usual draft departures. Now, there's no huge gap, but it's them and Georgia and Ohio State 1, 2, 3, just like it's always been. And if you listen to folks talk like, Bama's sort of taking a back seat talent-wise. I'm telling you, they have not. They're going to be right there. They'll be right there again at the end of the day. Those three have been there for a long time. But I think beyond that's where the fun really begins. It's still in it for Clemson. Look at this list right here. If you're listening to me on podcast, the top 5 is Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, and then there's Texas, and then there's Clemson. You believe that? You think Clemson's got the 5th most talented roster in the country? Well, they got it. They got a lot of them there. They're number 5. Their defensive front stacked like it has been in years past. They got some young and very promising receivers that I think you'll see against Georgia. Like, I think you'll see him pop against Georgia, which reminds me, Georgia's nearly a 2-touchdown favorite against Clemson. So if you were to look at that list and that list alone, that wouldn't make sense. So what an odds maker's telling you is either the gap between number 2 and number 5 is that wide, or Clemson's not living up to the reputation of their talent profile. Maybe Clemson pulls the upset and shuts everyone up. Really fun matchup to watch there in week 1. And here's another takeaway. Did you check out who number 6 was? Just outside the top 10 there, you see who number 6 was? Oregon's not coming. Oregon's there. They've arrived. Oregon's number 6 here. Oregon's instantly the number 2 most talented roster in the Big Ten the moment they walk in the door. So they're not getting in line. They're not being indoctrinated here. If anything, they're cutting in line, and they're taking one of the front seats, and the rest of you got to bump back a seat. Not only do they have the 2nd most talented roster in this conference, it's very well proportioned. It's not like they're loaded up with receivers and tailbacks and quarterbacks, but they're really lightweight on the line of scrimmage. Not at all. They will take the fight to you on the line of scrimmage. I also think long-term it'll help that program that they got beat the way they got beat in the Pac-12 title game last year. Because there was a firm belief that they held the physical advantage. They were going to be able to outrun, or they're going to be able to run the ball and outrush Washington, and they did not have that, and they did not do that. And that was a little wake-up call. And I think you've seen the result in the attitude they've had, in the players they went and got in the portal. They continue to recruit at a top 5 level, not just top 10 anymore. But instant number 2 in the Big Ten. If I were to have told you a decade ago, down the road, Oregon's going to go to the Big Ten, you would have thought they're going to get steamrolled up front. No, they will steamroll. They will steamroll. Now, they're not going to do that at Michigan. They're not going to steamroll Ohio State. But they are also not going to be steamrolled by either one of them. Did you also look at number 7? Mike Elko's in one of the best positions in the sport. I don't think people realize it. He took over for Jimbo Fisher. He's got the number 7 roster in the country, just right there. There's no burn it down, rebuild from scratch. There's none of that. There is a loaded roster with very, very poor organization. It was mismanaged. He's going to inject both of those immediately. Still gets the benefit of having all the good football players there, and they could pop immediately. I think A&M could be a playoff team this year. This year, they're playoff caliber. And the difference there is, unlike Kalen DeBoer, who takes over Alabama with national championship expectations, that's the standard there. At Texas A&M, Elko's taken over a top 7 roster, but the expectations sort of warped, inverted. People don't expect anything of Texas A&M. People don't hold them to that higher standard. And it's not because they're not capable of it, contrary to popular beliefs, just because they hadn't done it. So you got a place where it's all possible. You got a place where you can do everything the big boys do. You got all the resources the big boys have had, but you hadn't performed like the big boys have. Therefore, someone gets to come in there and be the first to do it. Elko's going to be the first to do it. He'll be a legend there. They'll remember his name there 50 years from now because of what he's about to do. And what he's about to do is he's about to prove a lot of folks wrong who claim that A&M's not capable of being an elite program. They are capable. They're just not. They are going to be proven wrong in thinking this is not an elite job. It absolutely is. Slam dunk elite job. Elko got it. They're going to be better for it. But I'm just trying to remind you, this is not a guarantee of anything, other than he's got some good football players. They're probably better than your mind tells you they are. They play Notre Dame week 1. Notre Dame's got the 10th best roster, according to the team talent composite, and they go play A&M on the road. So we've got number 7 versus number 10 in week 1. We got number 2 versus number 5 in week 1. Ought to be fun. Ought to be really fun. Oh, lastly, if you'll just take a look at 12 and 13, I'll go ahead and tell you who 14 was as well. So 12 is Florida, 13 is Florida State, 14 is Miami. That's the story. That's the story in college football. The state of Florida and the talent profiles of the big 3 in-state teams. Now, UCF has joined that, but these 3 historically have been the big 3 in the state of Florida. I think all 3 of them, if they have any kind of success this year, will continue to rise fairly substantially. Miami, no doubt, is going to continue to skyrocket in team talent composite. They'll be in the top 10 next year. Florida State will probably elevate to the top 10 next year. Florida, with a good class, would probably elevate to the top 10 next year, if they all bake in one more class there. But the thing about it is, someone's going to take a big blow to the groin perceptionally in week 1 when Miami plays Florida. I don't know how that impacts this. If the Florida staff suffers an early loss and they get wobbly and it affects the future of that staff, it obviously affects their recruiting class, and you know how that goes. So the other 2, like Florida State and Miami, I feel pretty good about. Florida, if they have a good year this year and they stave off the fate a lot of people already think is sealed for them, they'll all 3 continue to climb, like all 3 of those. The big question is, 3 years from now, has one of those separated itself from the other 2? That'd be my question.